All right, so today I'm going to show you how you can set up a profit and loss statement for any business from scratch using Excel. So let's go ahead and jump on my computer and I'm going to show you exactly how that's done. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. We're going to start out with a completely blank sheet so you can see how to build this from scratch. And of course, yours will look a little bit different, but what I'll do is show you the tools you need so that you can build one that works and makes sense for you. So we're going to start out by just renaming our tab Revenue. We'll have a Revenue tab, an Expense tab, and so on. At the top, let's put some headers. These would be the headers that make sense to you. I would want a date, a description. This is where we're going to build a table of all of our revenue. So date, description, category, and amount will be good for now. Not be too worried about formatting at this point. We will take care of that in a little bit. But okay, so now we've got our headers built out. Let's go ahead and format this as a table. So I'm just going to select that range right there, click on the Home tab, Format as a Table, and pick something. Since this is revenue, maybe I'll do green. All right, and I want to make sure I check this box. My table has headers because I do have headers there, and click OK. All right, and so now Excel has automatically put this table in for me. I can go ahead and enter in some example data just to get started, make sure it's working properly. We'll get to that in a minute. And for this, I would want to format this as currency. Okay, very good. And maybe get our date centered up. Okay, so now we have a basic table inserted, and I can build on that. And you see as I go, it's going to expand. So that's good. The table's automatically growing as we enter in new data into it. This will be where we record our revenue. So we really want to do the exact same thing with our expenses. And actually, I can hold down the Control key on my keyboard and left click and drag this tab to create an exact copy of it. Alternatively, if you like the mouse more, you can right click, do move or copy, and select create a copy and do it that way. All right, let's label this one expenses. And what we'll do is really leave our same categories, because let's just say we need the same categories in this case. Probably will be something like that, but I'm going to change the formatting. That's going to help me as I'm using this table not to get confused and think I'm entering data and expenses when it's really revenue. So having that difference in formatting will just help me keep track of that. Okay, so now we have our revenue and our expenses tables set up. Let's go ahead and now set up a summary where we can bring all that data in together and have more of a true profit and loss statement. Okay, so let's go ahead and insert a new tab by clicking this plus button at the bottom. I'll click and drag that over to the beginning, and we'll call it P&L. And I'm just going to go ahead and start laying this out. So let's say I want to have a sales revenue, and notice I'm not really worried about exactly what row I start in. It's so easy to insert and delete rows in the future that I'm not going to let that slow me down. So I've got sales revenue. Maybe I want to have somewhere down here cost of sales, operating expenses, and of course these categories would be whatever makes sense for your particular business. For now, I'm just going to have those three categories, and at the bottom we would end up putting our totals. Okay, so now what we would want to do is actually start filling in some of the examples here. So maybe when it comes to our sales data, we have different products or services. So I'm just going to have service 1, service 2, service 3, and so on. Of course, we would get those, replace those with real things. I'm going to right justify that, and I'll do the same thing with the cost of sales. There will be service or costs associated with each of those products or services. So again, that would just be a service 1, 2, 3, just like what we have up here. I'll actually just copy that down. Okay. So now we have our revenue. We're going to have the associated cost that's directly linked to those, and then just our regular operating expenses. And of course, there's a lot that we could put in here. We may want to do some categories like sales and marketing, and then have some specific items underneath that, like advertising, direct marketing, and I won't spend a lot of time getting those filled out. Of course, you can fill those out based on what you need, but just to give you an idea, we could have that. Maybe we have some administrative costs like supplies, utilities, insurance, and so on. And I'll go ahead and right justify those just for the sake of formatting. Okay, and this is going to be like our big header. So I'm going to make operating expenses maybe a 13 so that it really stands out. Then I can make this subheading a 12, and then these are, that's another subheading, we'll make that a 12. Okay, there we go. So maybe center these up. Okay, so you can see this coming together now. Another thing we can do to keep our formatting consistent is use the Format Painter tool. So I want all of my headings to look just like this one once I get it set up. So I'll click the Format Painter, and then I can just click another cell to paint that format onto it, to apply that same formatting, and I'll do that one more time. Okay, so now we've got some things set up there, but ultimately we want this to automatically fill out. We don't want to be manually tabulating numbers and putting them in here. And so what we're going to do is actually add a feature that will populate the numbers for a particular period in these cells. Okay, so to do that, what we want to use is our SUMIF formula. If you're not familiar with that, check out the link in the description of this video and we will show you how to set up the SUMIF formulas. But if you're already familiar with that, I'm going to assume that you are. It's fairly simple. All we need to do is type in our SUMIF. We just have one criteria, so we're not going to use the SUMIFs. Open that up, it's going to ask us for the range that we want to apply our criteria to. Since we're in revenue, we're going to use our revenue table, and I've preloaded this with some example data. So what we're going to use is the category field. That's what we're going to be testing our criteria against, and then the criteria itself will be this right here. And the range that we want to sum is going to be back on the revenue table, the amount column. Close my parentheses and hit enter, and you can see it's totaled up the amount of revenue that's come from service number 1. And so if I change that to service number 2, that number will automatically change. And the great thing about that is once we have the formula written, we can literally just copy it down and it'll work for all of those. And what I want to do is go ahead and format, I'm going to format all of this area as currency just to get it started that way. I might broaden up all of these columns. So I'm going to highlight all of those. The shortcut is Alt-HOW on your keyboard, or you can go up here to Format on the Home tab and change your column width that way. So I'm going to expand these maybe to like a 12 just to give some more room. Okay, so now we want to write that same kind of formula, but this one will be for our cost of sales. So we do need a new formula because it's going to point somewhere else. So we want to check the category for the expenses from the expenses table. So I'm going to go ahead and click that. Notice I just hover over this column and my mouse turns into a black arrow. That means when I click it, it's going to select that whole column. Alternatively, you can just click and drag. So it's just a little bit of a shortcut to do it that way. Okay, and now I want to come back to the P&L and specify the criteria right there, comma to separate into the next part of this formula, and I want to grab that sum range, which of course will be the amount. Close my parentheses and hit enter, and now I can take this formula and just copy it all the way down. And this will actually work in these as well because all of our expenses, whether they're cost of sales or operating expenses, are going to be entered in this one table. Okay, so now that is all pulling in automatically so that as we add new revenue, record new revenue items here or new expense items here, they automatically are factored into the profit and loss statement. So now let's go ahead and add in some summary rows. So for example, one of the things that I'm going to want to know is the total amount of sales. And so we could say total sales revenue, and that's just going to be a simple sum formula. And I'll go ahead and capture all that. And that way if I come in here and, for example, insert a new row, if I right-click there and do insert, this sum formula is just going to expand to include that since I went all the way down. Anything that gets added in here will automatically be included in that formula, so we don't have to keep rewriting it. Okay, so now we've got our services, we've got a total sales revenue. We can work on some formatting of that in a moment. I'm going to insert a row down here. The shortcut for that is just Alt-IR. So Alt-IR, or alternatively, of course, you can right-click over here and do insert. Now I want to have just like I have a total sales revenue, I want to have a total cost of sales, and that'll be the same formula just to sum all of those up. Okay, so now I have total cost of sales. Now I could actually do like a gross profit, not our net profit, but a gross profit. So gross profit, of course, is going to take our total revenue minus our cost of sales or cost of goods sold, depending on your model. And so that's getting me a gross profit before I have to take out operating expenses, a gross profit of $2,600. Okay, very good. So now we have those. Let's do the same thing down here. Now, you may want to have totals for your sales and marketing, your administrative, and so on. And we could certainly do that. In this case, though, I'm just going to have a total operating expenses at the bottom, and I'll have it sum up all of our operating expenses. And I'm going to click in or hit F2 to expand that formula, or you can click up in the formula bar, and I want to drag that down just to make sure I've got it captured so that if I insert rows above it, that formula will expand to include those. Okay, so now we have our total operating expenses, and what that means is that we can now calculate what our total, or our net profit rather, would be. So down here we'll have net profit, and that will be our gross profit minus our operating expenses. And you can see it is a positive value, so that's always good. Okay, so now we've got the main structure of this laid out. Let's just do a little bit of formatting to make it look nicer, and I'll also give you some tips on how you could take this further. Okay, so at the top I'm going to put actuals here, because this is where we're recording our actuals. And you could also set this up if you wanted to have a budget. So the budget column could be filled out in advance, for example. You could budget what you think your revenue and sales and so on would be, and then even have a comparison or a difference column over here as well if you wanted to have that. Let's go ahead and get these formatted a little bit. Now to make this look nicer, we'll just apply some basic formatting. So I'm going to use some fill colors, for example, behind the text. We'll work on bolding some of these summary columns to make them stand out a little bit more, and so on. So let's start out by just getting our headers with a little bit of color behind them. And in fact, if you're not going to, it depends on if you're going to print it. If you're not going to print it, you can use some darker colors and a white font for your headers. If you are going to print it, just keep in mind that you don't want to have real bold colors typically on something that you'll be printing. Okay, and I'll do the same on these. Okay, and then these we can actually change the color of the font to match the backgrounds that we used elsewhere. And I also like to turn off the grid lines, so I go to the View tab, turn off my grid lines, and eventually I'll probably turn off the headings as well, just to clean that up a little bit. But we can do that at the end. I want to insert a column to the left here so that we can give a little bit of a margin. So now I'm going to take and apply a white border everywhere. So I'm going to select everything in the sheet, everywhere that we have space, and I'll go to the Home tab, Format Cells, and go to the Format Cells button right here. You can also hold down Control and hit 1 as a shortcut. Okay, and we want to click the Border tab, and I'm going to select white so we can apply all white borders. Excel doesn't make it very easy because as soon as you select white, now you can't tell what any of these are, but I just know that by default it's got the thin line, which is what I want. So I'm going to apply that by clicking these buttons. Now we've got an inside and an outside border applied, and click OK. And that'll just make it look a little bit nicer as we continue adding in some shading. So for all of these lines, I'm going to make these a sort of light gray, just to distinguish them from the areas that we're not actually using in the workbook. Okay, so you can see that's coming together, looking a little bit nicer. Now let's make these summary items be bold. Step up one font size to 12, and I'm going to use the Format Painter tool. What I'm going to do is actually double click on that, and what that does is it keeps that tool active. So now I can apply it here, and notice I still have that paintbrush by my mouse. It's going to keep applying it until I hit the cancel button, or hit escape on my keyboard. Okay, there we go. So one thing that we may want to do is go ahead and copy over the sum formulas, because we're going to want to get a sum on our budget and also the total or net difference there. So I'm going to select those, and to copy those over you can hit Control C and then highlight where you want to paste them and do Control V, or you can do what I did to begin with, which is to select those, hover over the bottom right corner until your mouse changes to a crosshair, and then left click and drag over, and that will do the copying as well. So now we've got those set up for when we start entering budget numbers. And the difference column, of course, is just going to be the difference between the two. You probably want to do your budget minus your actuals. And we can go ahead and get those copied down everywhere as well. Okay. And since net profit is kind of a big deal at the bottom, let's go ahead and make that stand out a little bit. So I'm going to apply maybe a lighter blue background and bump up the font size a little bit. Notice all of these pound symbols show up. Whenever you see that in Excel, just means it doesn't have enough room to display. Typically, if you were to zoom in, like I just did, there it'll show up, but I want it to be able to show up at 100% zoom down here in the right corner. So all I'll do is just expand that column a little bit. And in fact, just to make sure that doesn't happen again, I have plenty of room left to right on this sheet. So I'm going to go ahead and do my Alt-HOW so that I can specify a new column width of 15 and expand those a little bit more just to make sure we have plenty of room. Okay, so now at the top, maybe you want to add in a logo and a title that this is a profit and loss statement. Maybe add in the year if you're doing this for a particular year, a quarter. In this case, I'm just going to do for the year 2022. And maybe we could put a logo in over here. So to do that, I'm just going to go to the Insert tab. You can also copy and paste it from somewhere, but I'll insert a picture. And I'm going to select one of our logos. And we'll just go ahead and shrink that up a little bit. Of course, if I were doing this for us, I would be using more of our branding colors rather than the blue colors so that everything kind of ties in nicely. And maybe I want to drag these, copy both of those down, and have the company name up here. Okay, so there's a basic profit and loss statement, and notice as we add things over here, they will automatically populate over here. Now, one thing that we could do immediately to make this better is implement some drop-down menus over here in our table. Because you could imagine as people are entering data here, especially if you have multiple people doing it, someone might misspell service and think they just did service 2, but they have a typo. And so now this, I'm going to make it a really big number so that we can verify that it's not showing up. So notice the revenue of service 2 did not go up by 15,000 obviously. So we don't want that to happen. If we replace that with the correct spelling, notice that number did go up really substantially. So the way to do that is with what's called data validation. That's going to allow you to do drop-down menus. If you're not sure how to do that, we've got a video on that as well. You can check the description of this video for a link. But for now, I'm going to assume you have that background, and so I'll just really quickly show you how to get that set up. Now, if you're not familiar, just pay attention and you can probably follow along and figure it out as I go. I'm going to insert a new sheet here and call it list. You could call it category maybe, actually would be better since that's all we're using it for. And I'm going to have revenue categories, really everything that is ending up over here. So I've got revenue, cost of sales, and or really just two, right? Revenue and expenses. So I'm going to have revenue and expenses, one for each table. So revenue, expenses, go ahead and broaden those out a little bit. This one is going to be service 1, service 2, service 3. And you'll remember that for expenses, we have the same thing. We have these 3, but we also had a few others. Now, just so I don't have to retype these, I'm going to copy all of them over here. And we've got a few duplicates, so I'll go to data and remove my duplicates just to get rid of that. Okay, so now we have a revenue and expenses table. I'm going to make these actual tables in Excel. There's a pretty good benefit for doing that. So I'm going to go ahead and make my, actually I'll make it match. So I'm going to do my revenue as the green table and my expenses as the blue table. And again, just making sure that we check that our table does have headers. Okay, so now that we have those set up, there's a couple different ways we can do this. In Excel, the most basic way to set up a drop-down list is going to be to come over here and select that whole column and go to Data, Data Validation, and we're going to do List. Select List as the option to allow. And in here, we can click this button that'll let us go select something. which will be from the category. We're on revenue, so we want to select our revenue table right there. Notice it just did A3 through A5, so click OK. And now for all of these, the user can quickly select whatever service they need to add in there. We can do the same thing for expenses. However, in this case, I'm going to show you a better way even of doing that. Let's do a test real quick to see. Depending on your version of Excel, you may or may not have to do what I'm about to show you. So for example, you can imagine one issue is, well, what if we add a fourth service over here? So somebody comes in and types in service 4. The question is that going to show up over here? So notice it does not. And depending on what version of Excel you're using, you may run into that problem. I want it to expand automatically. So when we set it up for the expenses one, I'm going to show you how to do that. So over here, I'm going to use what's called a named range. I'm going to click the header up there and go ahead and go to Formulas and Define Name. And I'm just going to call this Expenses. The important thing is just that you don't have any spaces in the name. Excel will not like that. So I've got Expenses. I'll click OK. Now what I can do, I've got this range right here is named as Expenses. But it's not a fixed range. It's actually dynamic. So that if I go and add, for example, service 4 down here, now that named range actually applies to this full range, including what was added to it. And that's what we're going to be able to benefit from when we click our header over here to select this column and add our data validation. So I'll go to Data, Data Validation, List, and this time I'm going to select, I'm going to enter equals expenses. That named range that I just did. Click OK, you'll see that drop down arrow appear, and now it's got everything in there. Notice it also has service 4. And if I come over here and now add a service 5, my expenses category will automatically show that. So that's just a quick way to have a more dynamic setup so that as you add revenue or expenses, they show up. And that's going to help us keep these a lot more consistent, make sure all of our spelling is right so that everything gets summed up over here. So that's all we're going to cover in this today. Of course, once you get this set up, you can do a lot more with it. For example, you could have this set up where you have a drop down and you can select the year. So I could select 2021, 2022, 2023. I could view it by quarters. I could view it by months and compare year over year. All of those things can be set up pretty easily. We could also set up a dynamic dashboard that has charts and graphs and shows how things change over time, how different services or products of revenue compare, for example, how profitable each one is. So once you get this basic part set up, the options are almost unlimited on what you can do next. But this will help you get going so that if you needed to show this to someone in your company, or maybe you're just using it for your own small business to keep track of your costs, your expenses, and so on, this would get you going with that. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to hit like and subscribe and the notification icon. Hey, thanks so much for watching our video. Now before you go, how would you like to get free access to tons of Excel content that is designed to help make your life easier and your business better? Free Excel tutorials, Excel PDF guides, mini courses, and even a book I'm writing right now. Well, if you don't want to miss out on those opportunities, make sure you check out the description of this video. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and the notification icon so that you can stay up to date on all the stuff we're doing here on YouTube. Oh, and by the way, my name is Colton Coppin, and I am the founder and CEO here at Custom Excel Spreadsheets, where we help business owners and professionals get more done using tools that do exactly what they need. We help you get organized and automate tasks that save you time and money, and build collaborative tools that allow your team to perform and to engage at a higher level. And we also create some awesome visualizations that just bring your data to life and help it to tell a story that is meaningful and compelling. So I look forward to serving you with more content in the future, and I hope to see you again soon. Thanks.